Hi there everybody, welcome to the Art of Procurement this week, and I'm Philip Eidson, the host of the show. My guest today is David Hearn. David is a long-time procurement executive for companies such as Juniper Networks, Kaiser, Permanente, and Sun Microsystems. And today, David is the CEO and founder of advisory firm CPO Advisement Services. A long-time listeners will actually recognize David. He's a repeat guest and definitely a friend of the show. And I caught up with David at the recent ProcureCon Indirect West conference in Scottsdale in Arizona, where he was talking about machine learning and its impact on procurement. We had a wide-ranging conversation, talking about the evolution of machine learning in procurement, different use cases, the supply market for machine learning procurement tools, and also where procurement leaders can actually start to experiment. And if, as you listen to the show, it sounds like we're recording in a garden, well, we were. We connected on the last day of ProcureCon with the majority of the conference space already cleared away. So we set up in the hotel garden. It was 100-degree heat. There was blazing sun as we were recording. We were surrounded by birds, waterfalls, and rather unexpectedly a construction site. So see if you can spot those noises in the background as we talk. So in my conversation, I actually started by asking David, what exactly is machine learning?
I have no idea what machine learning is. I'm not a technologist, but what I do know, because I had to read up, is it's actually just algorithms. And so I'm thinking back to my mathematics days that uses statistics to look for patterns or anomalies in data. But the key is the algorithm is built such that once it finds linkages that it thinks are linkages, you do have to tell it when it's wrong.
Yeah.
You don't have to tell it when it's right, you just see that it's right. But when it's going the wrong way, you nudge it back. But then you never have to nudge that again.
Right.
Because the algorithm is built to remember that. So that's why people talk about teaching your machine learning algorithm. But that's done in development stage.
Yeah.
So by the time it gets to a customer, a procurement group, it's already been taught.
Yep.
Now they may have the ability to teach it a little more, but 80-90% of it's already taught.
Kind of the stuff that's unique to that organization. It will learn to build on top of what are some of the norms that apply to every organization,
which is nice.
Every use case.
They always have the ability to tweak it at the end.
How is machine learning maturing? Because it seems to me like it's something we never heard of, and then all of a sudden we hear about it all the time. And is it just something that's already existed that has a nice, new, sexy title? Or is technology really evolving what is possible with machine learning?
Well, let's put it this way. I'm not the youngest guy in town. Machine learning was actually invented and coined in 1959.
Okay.
I wasn't born. Okay. So it has been around for a long time.
Yeah.
Because the basic technique was conceptual at that point. There was no horsepower in computing to do it. But the mathematicians knew, once they had the computing power, how to do it. It's based on mathematics.
Right. So it's the application of something that's already existed for a long time.
It's now just sped up at a pace that it can gobble data.
What made you so interested in, because I know here we are at ProcureCon, you just did a speech on, our presentation on machine learning.
Yeah.
Why were you interested in kind of exploring what the possibilities are for procurement?
I've got to admit that I've been searching for something, and I didn't really know it was machine learning. But as early as back 3 jobs ago, in the 90s, we had disparate data from multiple ERPs, because most companies do. We had lots of spend on P-card, on travel and entertainment, expense report data. And I just simply said, sourcing. I want to see all the data. And we couldn't do it.
Right.
And we even tried to do it, and Excel is just not able, nor do we have time as sourcing people to program Excel to that level of sophistication.
No.
And that's just getting the data together. And that's not the jewel.
Yeah.
That's a necessary evil, and it's powerful because machine learning actually helps the merge. But what I care about is getting insights about sourcing, consolidation, leakage, fraud, areas where we can put new programs into place because the spending is fragmented and we can pull it together. Okay, I'm a sourcing person.
Yeah.
What happened was asking about that 20 years ago, the answer was Excel. Okay. But over the years, then people started talking about big data.
Yep.
So I will admit, I left it that big data's going to solve it for me. And then big data didn't solve it for me. Okay. And then I started to read about, of course, now machine learning, not something new, but it's something applied to a problem like this. But only in the last year, literally 12 months, have I seen that procurement tool suppliers, and multiple of them, now saying, we're bringing AI experts in machine learning to apply it to indirect procurement. So I got very excited that finally, 20 years later, we're going to get the kind of insights to sourcing that I thought we should have had 20 years ago.
So what are some of the things that you are seeing then that's kind of exciting you that maybe wasn't available before? I mean, you don't have to name names, but I'm interested how we could apply the concepts of machine learning into procurement.
Yeah, so I actually have seen real customer data, which came from multiple ERPs, plus P-card, plus T&E, expense report data. So first it was brought together, and then machine learning had to figure out how to combine it and categorize it. Yeah. Because remember, every tool, every Visa card, MasterCard, they all categorize differently. What can be called video conferencing here is called collaboration software here, and it's called telecom over here. So the machine learning has to say, I think these are the same things, because otherwise you can't give it a report to a category manager. So I saw them take millions of P-card transactions, expense reports. It was a large company. And 8 ERPs.
Right.
Bring it together. They did their special sauce, and it came out categorized. And could you say, well, there's no international standard for categorization. Correct. But if it comes out 90% correct, you're so far ahead.
Yeah.
If you want to tweak it a little, tweak it. But don't tell them how to categorize. The machine learning, it's like a pachinko machine. It will fall out into natural buckets. Let it. Okay, but that's not the insight. The second step is then the machine learning looks for patterns, anomalies across the data. Let's say, so these guys were looking through all the spending, and they found that they had Dropbox spend, and the sourcing people are like, Dropbox? They're not the preferred supplier. How many is it? Nobody should be buying Dropbox. So they found that it was bought 53 times in the organization across, some guys hit it in expense reports, some put it on P cards, and then actually some got away with PO somehow. And they says, our preferred supplier is this. So bam, they can change policy, change direction. But also it's a security violation. Can't put IP outside the firewall in Dropbox. And lastly, compliance, because you're not supposed to buy software in T&E.
Right.
So that was a great example where massive amounts of data that no procurement person could get through in their lifetime quickly yielded an email, literally, to the sourcing manager for telecom and says, hey, we found this company. We found other companies or other vehicles where they're buying Dropbox. What do you think should happen to it?
Right.
So it doesn't go further. All it does is bring what we call an insight.
Yeah.
So as a procurement person, I'm helping these companies. Like I wrote 50 insights that a procurement sourcing person would want to know, but never could know. Yeah. Because it was too laborious. Yeah. And so that's what they're doing the magic behind the scenes to do.
So that's then really all automated. It just is a notification that comes out.
It is a notification. Now, the sourcing manager then can go to like dashboard and do tweaks and drill down, and because it doesn't do your job for you, but it sure speeds up getting you information that's helpful.
Right. This may seem like a silly question, but it's with my buying hat on and thinking about what we actually buy. What do we buy when we buy machine learning? Is it a box that turns up that we tell how to learn? Are we buying solutions that just have kind of the concept of machine learning integrated into them? So you're ultimately buying some outcomes.
Yeah. No, it comes in a Amazon Prime box, 2-day delivery. Yeah. Yeah. It's all service. Because that's the other nice thing. You don't have to worry about what's in the black box. They do.
Right.
So they are typically, whoever the supplier is, they're running their own servers, which are probably on Amazon, right? And the software, and you are accessing it usually through a portal on the web, secure, of course. And so, no, you're buying a service.
Right.
And it's not a one-time. You know how in the old days, because it's so laborious, we might do it every quarter?
Yeah.
Or we may not even look at P-card data every 6 months.
Yeah, and then it's 6 months out of date by the time we've got the chance to look into it and put it all into Excel and build our model.
This is near real time. So the data from your transactions is flowing to them in near real time, and the dashboard is coming back in near real time. I mean, literally, it's coming back in hours, because obviously there's enough compute horsepower to figure it out.
What do some of the pricing models look like for machine learning? I mean, are you buying, is it a subscription? Are you buying it per, I don't know, by the number of inputs? How does that work?
So my input to my procurement peers is start looking into machine learning solutions, because it is here. However, I also told them it's only now here. So there is no standard pricing model.
Yeah.
The industry has not worked out how you value this. What I have seen is some will value it as selling you a service for spend visibility.
Yeah.
Because that's the first step.
Yeah.
And some companies will just want that.
Yeah.
You know, my goal is beyond that to pay for insights, which of course are going to be more valuable. If you tell me a sourcing insight where I save millions of dollars, wow, that's not just a spend analytics tool.
No, they can price based on the value that's derived as opposed to the input cost of creating something.
So I don't want to open Pandora's box, but I don't know the answer to that question, because the suppliers that I've talked to, it is in really beta mode. So I haven't heard pricing models.
No, well, that's interesting though, because from a procurement perspective, it suggests that there's flexibility in approach. There's not like, this is the defined, in SaaS, it's here's your monthly subscription cost for whatever it is that you get.
Right.
But this is so immature that you can actually work things out that perhaps work for both you and work for the partner, the folks that you're actually working with.
That's a good point. I also see that the same data set and insights could be for internal audit to look for fraud. They could be to the compliance group if you have one. So I'm not sure it's just the sourcing people that'll be using this.
Right.
Maybe even accounts payable to help them.
Yeah.
So also the funding may come from different parts of your company.
As a procurement organization, so we often think about technology, we think how it's going to impact us. How is it going to impact procurement itself and the delivery of procurement services? But, we're obviously in a pretty unique position that we can look at what's happening in outside markets and the technology that's being delivered in outside markets and bring it in to our stakeholders. So what kind of guidance would you give to, a category manager, for example, who's thinking, how could actually machine learning impact my category? And how can I bring that into the organization so that it actually helps, maybe buy what I'm buying today, but in a different way, or bring more outcomes or better deliverables from what we're buying today?
Well, you hit on the real end game, which I didn't mention, but the end game is making us more credible with stakeholders, because we bring deeper ideas into their spend on how to either get them better suppliers or lower costs or whatever. Think about it today. We kind of go to our stakeholders with basic spend reports.
Right.
I almost felt guilty when I was doing it going to the CFO. I literally did, because I felt like I should be better at this, but I just don't have the tool. If I can go and have these really things where the stakeholder goes, wow, really? How'd you figure that out?
Yeah.
Okay, so that's the ultimate goal. You wow them. Now you asked, how do we prepare ourselves as category manager? Here's my biggest concern. Since I'm not an expert at the mechanics or mathematics, what's the first thing the stakeholder's going to ask? They're going to say, how'd you figure this out? So how do we learn as category managers, an inch deep on machine learning? Just enough to be able to describe, we put all the data together, algorithms were built that looked for patterns and anomalies. We told it when it was right and wrong, which helped it to then get better and better over time. That's how I gave you this insight, Mr. Stakeholder.
Right.
But if we walk in and go, I don't know.
Yeah.
The thing just spit it out.
Yeah.
That's a loser, right? We have no credibility.
Yeah.
So I do think we have to do a little education, basic.
Yeah.
Nobody should have to be an expert at machine learning to apply this well.
So as you've learned, more about machine learning over the last, let's say, couple of years, what are some of the places that you've gone to kind of get that learning for yourself?
I started, like I said, that where it started in 1959, and it helped because it wasn't based on jargon and marketing terms. It was just a mathematician describing the concepts, which were almost in layman's terms because he was brilliant, so he could simplify things.
Yeah.
And that helped me because when he said mathematical algorithms combined with statistics, I get that.
Yeah.
Okay. So yeah, I started back at where it started. And how it's progressed, I will fully admit, I don't know how they write these algorithms.
Yeah.
And I don't care if it's a C++ or some magic language. It doesn't matter to me. So the learning I did was on the basics. I actually stopped there. Now, learning on who's doing it, I did start to research then in current technology. Am I hearing them saying it?
Yeah.
And that only started in the last year. Now almost everybody's saying it.
Right.
Now, who's actually
Now
applying
separating, the marketing from the reality.
I haven't fully done that.
Yeah.
So that's why I'm asking for data, because I'm a facts and data, not PowerPoint slides guy. So guys, if you can't give me, you don't have to tell me the customer name or blah, 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 but I want a real world example where you tell me what you did, what data sources were used, and the outcome.
Yeah.
A sourcing outcome. If they can tell me that, blinded, then I feel comfortable that they're really doing it.
What kind of other use cases have you come across? You mentioned, spend analytics and kind of driving some insights from data on the spend perspective, but have you seen other use cases, so other ways that we can apply machine learning, perhaps even today?
Wow, something just came to me, Philip, that I hadn't thought about is I actually experienced machine learning 7 years ago, and I had totally forgotten. I worked for an extremely large medical hospital healthcare system, and I was helping in sourcing and IT, and there were geniuses, PhD geniuses, who were startups and using machine learning on medical data.
Yeah.
And what they were doing is pouring over something a doctor would never have time for, but presenting the doctor with hey, based on what we saw here about this patient, you might want to look here because we see, a combination of circumstances that weren't apparent on the surface.
Yeah.
So this concept, I'm sure it's actually applicable any place we have large amounts of data.
Yeah.
So this whole thing about big data, I don't know, it felt like a marketing term that never came to fruition. I think it turned into machine learning.
Yeah. Interesting.
So you have to have complex data. But then if you're trying to get insights that no human can do on their own, that's machine learning.
Right. Do you see how much of a human touch is still required to get those insights? So is it really just the setup of the the initial thinking? I'm thinking of a better term. It's escaping me, but making sure that it's intelligent. It's thinking about things intelligently. Once you said before, once it does it once, it's learned. It doesn't need to be told how to do it again. Is that where the human touch comes in before it gets the insights?
Yeah, and it's like you don't want to be the first customer because the first beta customer does a lot of the teaching.
Yeah.
But if you're in an industry or a function, so let's say indirect procurement, right? We know that while it varies slightly between companies and industries, 80% is really similar. Therefore, those first customers that train it are training it in a way that it will be applicable to the next 100 customers.
Yeah.
Now, if you go to direct materials, you'd probably have to train it again.
Yeah.
Or if you went, to medical insights, you got to train again. But if you're in a similar category, it's a cumulative learning.
Yeah.
So the first 10 teach it 90%, the next 100 teach it another 5%. So there's a network effect.
Yeah.
So the learnings are shared.
Yeah.
So they don't keep the learning specific. So that's part of their business models, which is you can't keep your own learnings.
Yeah.
I got to be able to tell the next customer, hey, I figured out a way to find this fraud. So every customer will benefit from the other customers before them.
It's like, in procurement outsourcing, I was in procurement outsourcing, and the importance of spend data and results across customers. You pool, it's anonymized, it's aggregated, but then that provides a benefit for the whole community of clients.
Right.
And you continue to build on it. So it's kind of that same concept.
Yeah, exactly.
What advice would you give to a CPO who's thinking about exploring some of the technologies? You said right now a lot of things are still in beta mode, so they are going to be an early adopter.
Yes.
One, where to start is an area where it's ripe to start, and perhaps spend analytics is one. Maybe there's something else, just from what we talked about. But then, how should they kind of develop that relationship with a partner who is still early stage? You're not going to be typically you're not going to be working with somebody who's a giant multi-billion-dollar revenue company. It's going to be a startup, or it's going to be somebody who's getting into this for the first time.
Yeah. The good news is I think there's low barriers to entry, because in procurement, it will be spend analytics first. Mm-hmm. And therefore, all you have to do is give them your data.
Yeah.
And obviously, you can get past any confidentiality. Right. So since it's easy to give them the data without risk, because usually in the early stages, they're looking for companies to give them data so they can continue to build the models. So if you approach the smaller guys, I agree with you, because the bigger guys, it's hard to get the attention. Mm-hmm. Okay. So that's what I would do, is search out. And, things are being written now. So it's not like you can't find them.
Right.
These companies are not all stealth now. Mm-hmm. They may be small and startups, but they have websites and things like that.
Right. And they're well funded. I imagine some of them as well.
And amazing. Well, that was what surprised me is I'm like, VCs are spending money on indirect procurement. Yeah. What happened here?
Right.
Well, they woke up that there's billions and trillions of dollars in our unsexy profession.
Yeah.
So yes, they are well funded. So, frankly, just hit Google and start a little bit of searching and talking to people.
Yeah.
Because they are out there, and it's a low risk to start. And I would say that have a vision that you're not going to stop spending analytics, because that's one value. But I really think helping your stakeholders see that you have used technology to be much smarter than we ever were is the real benefit.
Yeah.
Lastly, don't spring it on your people. Mm-hmm. Like I said, if you haven't taught them the basics so they can explain where the data came from, it will, I think, lose credibility in the beginning stages. But and this is a little maybe not right at the beginning, but longer term, look at your processes, because I think machine learning and the learnings from it, if you look at procure to pay or source to pay, I talked a lot about sourcing, but I bet you there's 5-6 places within the whole process where the process will be helped by the insights that come out.
Right.
So buyers could be helped.
Yeah.
Sourcing managers, actual internal audit, fraud and compliance, AP. This is not a one-trick pony. Right. So you'll have to remap your processes to see where to maximize the leverage. Because when you finally do get to paying for this, don't just go in and say it's a sourcing insight tool. It is. But I think you'll be able to get a higher ROI to your CFO if you look at the applicability across multiple areas.
Right. I got one last question that kind of follows up on that, because I'm imagining, doing something as a pilot or a proof of concept or something, where you're working with one of these suppliers who are, having this new machine learning technology, applying it to spend analytics and doing it concurrently with, an existing solution, perhaps, especially for those organizations that are a little bit more mature, and then doing a compare and contrast to say, well, this is what data comes out using this approach. This is the data that comes out using our traditional approach. What's the difference? What's driving more insight? That's still a lot of work. I just wonder how much work really is involved in giving them your spend data, or is it just a matter of doing an export at this point because you've already got it in another tool and pushing it over?
Yeah, it's funny because over the years, people have cautioned me to give out my procurement data. Now, there is, of course, some intellectual property, but most indirect procurement spend is not. It's confidential, but it doesn't have intellectual property in it, okay? So therefore, I was like a data, what would you call it? Peddler. Mm-hmm. Everybody that came through the door, I'd give data to because I do what you said.
Yeah.
I literally, before machine learning, I'd give it to all the SIs, I'd give it to all the consulting firms, and I'd go, hey, come back.
It's yours. What can you do with it?
And you're going to come back, and you're going to come back. So I love the shootout approach because that will help us all figure out, okay, who comes back with insights?
Yeah.
Who comes back and says, hey, I got your data in the model. Now, can you give me 2 people for, 4 weeks to sit in front of it and train it?
Yeah.
No.
Right.
I really like a tool where it's trained.
It's done for me.
It's like, I don't want the little puppy.
Yeah.
Okay, give me a puppy that's potty trained. So it will separate who's advanced and who's just beginning in machine learning.
Right. Well, David, I want to really thank you for taking the time to have a chat on machine learning. And
thank you for talking.
The peanut gallery that we have above us, in all the birds in this tree, that we're doing this outside. It seems like they've all come to listen in and give their own perspectives.
Well, you've changed the procurement to the art of procurement here in this beautiful setting.
Yeah.
So thank you.
Well, all the further information, details on how to contact you, I'll put your LinkedIn profile.
All right, great.
On the show notes.
I'm happy to answer emails, LinkedIn, whatever.
Great. Well, those will all be at artofprocurement.com/machine learning. That's artofprocurement.com/machine learning. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thanks. Thank you for listening to another episode of The Art of Procurement. To find an archive of all past episodes, you can go to artofprocurement.com/episodes. And to ensure you never miss another show, go to artofprocurement.com/subscribe.